Have you ever wondered how your brain tells your body to move? Or how you feel a pinprick on your fingertip in milliseconds? That lightning-fast communication happens through one major highway, your spinal cord. In this video, we're breaking down spinal cord anatomy, talking about spinal nerves, and nerve plexuses. Hi, and welcome back to my channel, Learning Biology with Dr. Vanessa, where I take difficult biological concepts and make them easy to understand. So if you're studying for anatomy and physiology, pre-nursing, or any health science field, you're in the right place. But there's more to the spinal cord than just wiring. It's also a decision maker. Every signal traveling through isn't automatic. It's an integration site for excitatory and inhibitory postsynaptic potentials between neurons. That constant integration is what allows the spinal cord to coordinate movement, reflexes, and communication with the brain. Understanding its structure is the foundation for understanding how your nervous system actually functions. So let's dive in. The central nervous system includes the brain and spinal cord. The spinal cord acts as the main communication highway between your brain and your body. It extends from the foramen magnum of the skull to about L1, L2, where it tapers into a cone-shaped structure called the conus medullaris. Below that, the nerves continue downward in a bundle that resembles a horse's tail, and so it is named the cauda equina. The central nervous system is protected by several structures. The first is skeletal protection. The skull protects the brain, and the vertebral column protects the spinal cord. These strong bones act as an armor against impact or injury. And then we have the meninges. The meninges are 3 layers of protective connective tissue coverings that lie between the bone and the organ. The cranial meninges surrounds the brain, and the spinal meninges surround the spinal cord. From superficial to deep, the layers are, first, the dura mater, which translates into tough mother. This is the thick, outermost, durable layer made of dense, irregular connective tissue. The epidural space is found between the dura mater and the wall of the vertebral canal. It contains fat and connective tissue for cushioning and added protection. Going further deep, under the dura mater, we have the arachnoid mater, where this stands for similar to spider, and this is because this layer is a thin, web-like avascular membrane made of collagen and elastic fibers that again resembles a spider web. The subdural space is found between the dura and arachnoid mater. This space contains interstitial fluid. And then finally, the last layer is the pia mater. Pia is delicate. This is the innermost layer, and it is a transparent, delicate connective tissue layer that tightly adheres to the surface of the spinal cord and brain. It contains many blood vessels that supply oxygen and nutrients. And between the pia and arachnoid mater is the subarachnoid space, which is filled with cerebrospinal fluid. Which brings us to our last protection of the central nervous system, which is cerebrospinal fluid. So cerebrospinal fluid is a clear, colorless liquid that cushions the brain and spinal cord. This is to protect them against shock and chemical fluctuations. It also carries oxygen, glucose, and nutrients from the blood to the neurons and glial cells and removes waste. It is continuously made and reabsorbed, which works to keep pressure and volume stable. Cerebrospinal fluid has 3 key functions. The first is mechanical protection, where it works in shock absorption, protecting the delicate tissues of the brain and spinal cord from jolts. It also has chemical protection, where it works to maintain an optimal chemical environment for neural signaling. And finally, there's circulation, and this is where it delivers those nutrients and removes waste. It's produced by the choroid plexuses and ependymal cells in the ventricles of the brain. Inside, the spinal cord has an inner butterfly-shaped region of gray matter surrounded by white matter. Gray matter contains neuron cell bodies, dendrites, unmyelinated axons, and neuroglia. It's where information processing and synaptic integration occur. White matter is made of myelinated axons that carry nerve impulses between different parts of the central nervous system. The gray matter on each side of the spinal cord is subdivided into regions called horns. Posterior gray horns contain axons of incoming sensory input, which are referred to as afferent axons, as well as cell bodies and axons of interneurons. Anterior gray horns contain cell bodies of somatic motor neurons that provide impulses for skeletal muscle contractions. This motor output is efferent. The lateral horns lie between the posterior and anterior gray horns. They are present only in thoracic and upper lumbar and mid-sacral segments of the spinal cord. These lateral horns contain autonomic motor neurons that regulate the activity of cardiac, smooth muscle, and glands. The white matter of the spinal cord, like the gray matter, is organized into regions. The anterior and posterior gray horns divide the white matter on each side into 3 areas called funiculi. Anterior, posterior, and lateral funiculi contain tracts, which are bundles of axons that we find in the central nervous system. These are responsible for carrying specific information. Sensory tracts are ascending and consist of axons that conduct nerve impulses towards the brain. Motor tracts are descending and consist of axons that carry nerve impulses from the brain. Sensory and motor tracts of the spinal cord are continuous with sensory and motor tracts in the brain. Spinal nerves extend from the spinal cord. This is what links the spinal cord to the body, and as such, spinal nerves are part of the peripheral nervous system. There are 31 pairs of spinal nerves. The 31 pairs of spinal nerves include 8 cervical, 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar, 5 sacral, and 1 coccygeal. Each spinal nerve is mixed, carrying both sensory and motor fibers. Before forming a spinal nerve, these fibers enter and exit the spinal cord through the dorsal posterior root, and this is where we find those sensory axons, and then the ventral anterior root where we find the motor axons. Knowing that the dorsal is where we find the sensory and the ventral is where we find the motor will be important, especially when we get to the physiology of the spinal cord in the next video. Each spinal nerve is wrapped in protective connective tissue layers. Individual axons within a nerve, whether they're myelinated or unmyelinated, are wrapped in endoneurium, which is the innermost connective tissue layer. This layer consists of mesh collagen fibers, fibroblasts, and macrophages. Groups of axons are held together in bundles called nerve fascicles, which are wrapped in perineurium, the middle layer. This layer is a thicker layer of connective tissue, which consists of up to 15 layers of fibroblasts within a network of collagen fibers. The outermost layer covers the entire nerve and is called the epineurium. It contains fibroblasts and thick collagen fibers. The epineurium fuses with the dura mater as nerves exit the vertebral column. These connective tissue layers probably sound pretty familiar, as the organization of skeletal muscles is very similar. After leaving the spinal cord, spinal nerves branch into rami. The posterior ramus serves the deep muscles and skin of the posterior surface of the trunk. The anterior ramus serves the muscles and skin of the limbs and anterior trunk, and the meningeal branch re-enters the vertebral cavity to supply the vertebra, vertebral ligaments, blood vessels of the spinal cord, and meninges. Anterior rami coming out of these spinal levels form networks called nerve plexuses. These are interconnected nerve fibers that serve specific body regions. However, the anterior rami of T2 to T12 don't form plexuses. These are intercostal or thoracic nerves. These nerves directly innervate the structures they supply, such as the intercostal muscles and skin nearby. Anterior rami from the other spinal levels do form plexuses. And so the major plexuses are the cervical plexus, the brachial plexus, the lumbar plexus, the sacral plexus, and the coccygeal plexus. So let's go through a quick overview of each one of these plexuses. The cervical plexus includes C1 to C4 with contributions from C5. It supplies the skin and muscles of the head, neck, and upper shoulders and chest. And its most important nerve is the phrenic nerve, which is formed from C3 to C5, which is responsible for controlling the diaphragm. A key to remember is C3, C4, C5 keep the diaphragm alive. Damage here can lead to respiratory failure, a critical concern in spinal injuries. Next up is the brachial plexus, one of the most clinically important nerve networks. It's formed by the ventral rami of C5 to C8 and T1. It supplies almost the entire nerve supply to the shoulders and upper limbs. And this plexus has a famous organization where it goes from roots to trunks to divisions to cords and then to branches. The major branches are the musculocutaneous nerve, which supplies the anterior muscles of the arm, the axillary nerve, which supplies the deltoid and teres minor muscles, radial nerve, which supplies the muscles of the posterior arm and forearm, medial nerve, which supplies most of the muscles of the anterior forearm and some of the muscles of the hand, and the ulnar nerve, which supplies most of the muscles of the hand. And this is the one where if you hit your funny bone, that's actually your ulnar nerve that is causing that pain. The anterior rami of spinal nerves L1 to L4 form the lumbar plexus. It supplies the lower abdominal wall, anterior and medial thighs, and the genital region. Its two major nerves are the femoral nerve, which innervates the anterior thigh muscles or quadriceps, hip flexion and knee extension, and the obturator nerve, which innervates the medial thigh muscles or adductors. The anterior rami of spinal nerves L4 through L5 and S1 through S4 form the sacral plexus. The sacral plexus serves the buttocks, perineum, pelvis, posterior thigh, leg, and foot. And its superstar nerve is the sciatic nerve, which is the longest and largest nerve in the body. The sciatic nerve branches into the tibial nerve, which supplies the posterior leg, and the common fibular nerve, which supplies the lateral leg and foot. And then the roots of the spinal nerves S4 through S5 form a small coccygeal plexus. It is a small network that innervates the skin over the coccyx and part of the pelvic floor. Together, the spinal cord and spinal nerves create a precise communication network between your brain and body. Whether you're retracting your hand from a hot stove or taking a deep breath, these pathways make it possible. If this video helped you to better understand spinal cord anatomy, be sure to subscribe for more lessons on how your body works. In the next video, we'll be taking it a step further, looking at spinal cord physiology and talking all about how those spinal reflexes work. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.